So here we have the colors that we're going to be using to mix with today. It's our split or our double primary palette. Most of the colors we're going to be using are right there on our color wheel, already pretty much mixed. The Fanchon Red, Naphthol Red makes a mix with a little bit of Indian yellow and white. It's going to make that light sort of peach color where the light's hitting the building. Then the crimson with a little bit of ultramarine blue in it is going to make the dark. Then we're going to use phthalo blue and a little bit of yellow ochre and a few other bits and pieces like some white to make those shadow colors for the white cornices that are on the edge of the building. So hang tight and we're going to start mixing in just a second. So here we have 3 whites that are ready to make the blues for the sky. These 2 patches of white are for mixing the neutrals that are the shadows on the cornices. These 3 reds are for the 3 different values on the building itself. So I'm going to start with mixing the blues for the sky and use mainly ultramarine blue with a little bit of phthalo blue for the first one. That's going to be the darkest one at the top. So I'm going to start with the ultramarine blue at the top and finish with one that has a little bit of more pure phthalo in it. So I keep wiping my knife off so that I don't get too much or get any white mixed in with my original blue. So there's the one for the top. I take a little bit of the blue that was just what was on my knife and mix it into the next one so that this one is going to be partially ultramarine and partially phthalo. So just a tiny little bit of phthalo. It doesn't take much at all to begin to alter the temperature of that light ultramarine. And you can see how it's starting to green up just a little bit. So there'll be a nice contrast between it and the one it's up against. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit on the knife for that last one. May need a little bit more. Had a little too much phthalo on there. So it's going to be a fairly light one. And that's that mixture. Then I'm going to add some phthalo to it so that it becomes even more a little greeny. That is a little too dark. Happens sometimes with phthalo blue. It's really easy to go too dark too fast. I'm going to take a little bit of that, put it back in the middle one. So there's always some adjustment you have to do as you're working. You can't just necessarily go with that first thing you've squeezed out there. So be ready to adjust when you need to. So to keep that light, I'll pull that up into the side so that it doesn't go too dark too fast. And give myself some more pure white. Put about half of that into it so it really significantly lightens up so that there's a bigger difference. So what you're looking for is that exaggerated difference between light and dark that I was talking about in the concept video. And there we go. So that is the arrangement for the sky. Next, we're going to work on creating some for the building. I think I need a little bit more white there. Because that first one has a good bit of white in it. So remember, Indian yellow is a dye color, so it's going to need the white to be as intense as it needs to be. So there is brilliant yellow, which is still too cool for that light hitting the side of the building. Probably needs a little bit more Indian yellow to bring down the value and intensify it a little bit. There's that tipping point with any of the dye colors where they do dull out, so I want to get it close to full strength. There we go. So that is about pure yellow. So you mix dark into light so that you don't have to keep working back and adding tons more white to it. So let me wipe that off. I've got some yellow on there. So I'm going to take some of that red. And notice that I am pushing and mushing. I'm into cheesy mantras. So I'm pushing and then I'm mushing it down. You saw how little of the red it really took there to make that color. And I think it still needs to be a little bit lighter and a little bit more yellow. So mix what you think it should be and then adjust as you go. So I'm going to steal a little bit more white. This is why you don't mix light into dark, because you'd be forever putting out more white. Lighten that up a little bit. There we go. That is closer to what I'm looking for. A little bit lighter and a little bit more yellow. And I know some of y'all have talked about feeling nervous about wiping off the knife and how much paint you're wasting. You're really not. You're not wasting much at all. It looks like it's more than it is, but you save so much paint actually by mixing with a knife over mixing with a brush. So don't be hesitant about mixing with a knife. So add more yellow to it. There we go. Now that's beginning to get more of that yellow-orange color that I was looking for. And those of you who've looked at the convenience colors that I have on there, this is equivalent to the Montserrat orange that I love to use so much. It is the way you mix that. A little bit more yellow, maybe a tiny little bit more white to brighten it up, and that one's going to be ready to go. Now I'm going to use some of this to mix the other colors as well, so that none of that is wasted. Go ahead and grab a little bit of white. It's not going to take much to intensify what I have on there. There we go. Okay, so it's a little bit more intense. Remember I said we need to exaggerate the intensity. A little bit more intense, a little bit brighter than that color swatch that I pulled out of the photograph. Okay. So this next, I'm leaving a little bit of that color on my knife and mixing it into the next pile of red, because I am going to mix that duller violet, and I'm going to do that with ultramarine blue and the Fanchon red. This is going to be that darkest violet that I'm working with. So I'm exaggerating just a hair and making it darker than it was, a little bit darker than it was when it was pulled out. And remember, there was one that was a little bit lighter and a little bit bluer. So it looks like I need a little bit more ultramarine blue. And again, I'm leaving some of that on my knife. And I'm going to wipe that off before I go into my blue, I'm going to take most of that pile because I want it to be more blue than it is red. Heading towards that blue violet. And then I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. It's just a little bit more blue violet than what it's next to. And it clearly needs a little bit more blue. It's still a little bit too much on the red-violet side. But again, because blue is the darker color, I want to mix it into the red mixture, not put the red mixture into it. Much better off going slow on that so that you get the correct color. Again, the color mixing on this is probably going to take longer than the actual painting because the painting is so simple. So I'll put a good bit of blue in there. And then I'm going to lighten it. Now I could go with that one. It's pretty close. Or I could pull some to the side down here and add some more blue to it to make it even more different. I may switch these around and use this one for the darker dark. We'll see. Let's make this one a little bluer. So there that is, and it's a little bit on the bluer side for the darker dark, and then I think I may warm that up just a little bit more to make it a little bit more different. There we go. That's what I was after. So I'm trying to get one that is different in hue and temperature so that it will create a bend in the building. So what you want to do is make sure those three that you've mixed are pushed apart far enough that you're going to have some distinct differences. That's one reason to mix them side by side so you can tell whether those differences are showing up or not. The only other colors I have left to mix are those neutrals for the whites. And they are a very small part of what we're working with. I'm actually going to take a little bit of this blue. It's not going to take that much. So I'm going to make one that's a little cooler neutral and one that's a little warmer. So right now that's pretty much phthalo blue. Remember that orange is the complement of blue. So I'm going to reach over here to this color I used for the light on the brick. Take a very small amount, much less than you think. And I'm going to mix it in with that blue. And that is going to neutralize the blue some because they are complements. That means they're opposite to each other on the color wheel. And you will see that that's pretty close. I need a tiny little bit more, but pretty close to what we had. So then the next one needs to be a little bit darker and a tiny little bit duller. So I'm going to take a little bit of this color and add it to it to send it a little bit the other direction. So keep adding some of that blue violet until they are far enough apart on the color wheel so that you can see a distinct difference on the palette. And they're next to each other, and I think that just about does it. That's it. That's all we have to do. So now we're going to jump in and we're going to capture that no-tan first. So make sure you look at the no-tan, and we're going to work with that darkest dark in the building. Kind of give yourself some little guidelines to go by. Or you can take that small brush you've got and lightly indicate where those shapes go. But what you don't want to do is draw on there first with pencil or charcoal. It will get all into your painting and become quite frustrating. So I'm going to apply that really thinly and establish my darkest darks and the lightest lights really quickly. So remember, you're still blocking in. That's the main block in there with the dark. That's the no-tan. Then we're going to go quickly to the sky. Start with that darkest blue up at the top. Remember, I said leave all of that foliage off because we're not worrying about foliage right now. Right now I'm just trying to get paint onto the panel. Don't think of it as being too precious. Don't skimp on your paint. Also, keep it thin. Notice I'm using the largest knife, that number 109. It's much easier for blocking in than the little one. We'll cover it in really quickly. So I'm going to bring the blue, darker blue down further than it actually goes, so I can get a little blending in there. And as you get close down there, you can turn the knife. So, go to the next blue. And it is actually lighter over in that corner over there than this one on the right. It's lighter on the left. So I can keep that in mind and mix a blend a little bit more strongly on this side. So I'm going to come right up on the edge. Right up on the edge, and if I catch a little bit of the violet, I can wipe it off with a knife. Otherwise, keep going and go back and forth to lightly blend that in. We're not worrying too much about a lot of blending at this point yet. You're going to get all of it blocked in, then you can go back and blend to the degree you want to. Paper towel time. And I'm going to go to the lightest and place it over here. And a little bit more of that lightest blue right up here. I'm going to come back and finesse that at the end. I don't mind letting a little bit of the toned ground show through, but not too much. You don't want to have a glow halo thing going on there. So I went back to the medium blue. And then pulling that up and in. If it picks up a little of the purple, it's okay. You can blend that in. If you pick up a whole lot, you need to wipe. And some of that I can catch at the very end. Some more of that light up, because remember I said it was lighter on this side than the other. So I want to blend some of that in a little bit, and the rest of it I'm going to leave until the very end. I'm going to come back in and finesse some of that. I've gotten it basically blocked in. So there's the building and the sky, and it already has a sense of depth and space. Doesn't take very much. Wiping the knife super well. Then I'm going to put in the lights on the building. And it goes roughly here, almost in a straight line. And where I need to, I can pull some of that purple off underneath because it's going to want to blend. And you need to load more paint on there when you're doing this because it's a color that is a little inherently thinner. So I'm going to block it in. If I need to come back and adjust, I can. So don't worry about that bottom line because you can tweak that. Then the other mirrors that same pattern. This doesn't come over quite as far as that, because that's the edge of the building. And there we have the tops, very quickly established. Then we're going to go for this side here that's facing away. It's just a little bit warmer. So I can overlap those edges there a little bit when I need to, because I can carve it back out. So then I can push that over with the knife to make that edge. And then remember the other side goes darker and bluer. Although there's not a super hard edge right there. I do need to get a little bit of that warm right there. Then more of the darker one right here. So then the building is established, and the only part that's left is the cornice, and I'm just going to put those on very simply. To put them on, I'm going to scrape back out. So that there's a place to put those. If you try to put white right on top of that super dark, it's going to blend a whole lot. Make sure those lines stay parallel to the ones above them, so the perspective looks correct. Then I'm going to put the cooler one on the front face. I need the other knife. And you can see where it splattered out. That's no big deal. easily go back up like this and carve it back out again. And like that, and carve that back out again. So your line doesn't have to be perfect, because you can adjust it once it's on there. So you're trying to allude to that cornice, not draw it. Remember, it didn't go all the way over. So I'm putting some more of the warmer red back on top. And a little bit more of the cool underneath over here. And then it's just a matter of cleanup. So, there we have it. That is our building in strong sunlight.